In the battle for custody, emotions are running high, but nothing could prepare the court for what was about to unfold. A mother's fierce determination to keep her child away from her ex-husband leads to a courtroom showdown that will leave you speechless. As the judge listens to the bitter accusations, all eyes turn to the one person who might hold the key to this bitter war: the daughter. Her testimony, innocent yet powerful, cuts through the tension in the room like a knife. What she says next leaves everyone stunned, turning the tables in an unexpected way. But as the truth begins to unravel, a dark question lingers: is this really about what's best for her, or is it all about revenge? As the courtroom falls into a tense silence, the daughter, barely 10 years old, is called to the witness stand. Her small frame barely reaches over the podium, and her nervous hands clutch the edges of the chair as she fidgets. All eyes are on her, but what she says will shift the course of the entire trial. Her voice, shaky but clear, begins to spill out truths that no one expected. "I don't want to live with her anymore," the daughter says, her words hitting like a thunderclap. A collective gasp ripples through the courtroom, and the mother's face hardens, her lips pressing into a thin line. She's already been adamant in her fight to keep her ex-husband from seeing their daughter, accusing him of everything from neglect to emotional abuse. But this confession flips the script in ways no one saw coming. The judge, clearly taken aback, leans forward, his expression both skeptical and intrigued. "Can you tell us why?" he asks, his voice gentle, almost too gentle. The girl hesitates, her eyes darting from her mother to her father, both of whom are watching her intently. With a deep breath, the daughter starts to speak again. She says things about him. "She tells me things that make me feel scared." She glances down, almost as though she's ashamed to continue, but the truth seems to pour out uncontrollably. "She says he doesn't love me. That he never wanted me. But that's not true. I know he loves me." The father, who had been sitting quietly at the back of the room, suddenly leans forward, his eyes welling up with emotion. He's been fighting for this moment, a moment where he could finally speak his truth, but now it's coming through his daughter's voice. The mother, though, is visibly shaking, her grip on her purse tightening as if she's trying to hold it together. The courtroom murmurs, but the judge motions for silence. He turns his attention to the mother, who remains unusually quiet for a moment. Finally, she speaks, her voice sharp, defensive. This is nothing more than manipulation. She's just trying to please him. She doesn't understand what she's saying. She's a child. Her words cut through the room, but there's something in her tone and note of desperation that suggests she's no longer as certain as she once was. But the daughter, her eyes clear and resolute, continues, undeterred by her mother's outburst. "I understand enough. I don't want to be with her when she says those things. I don't want to hear them anymore." The tension in the room is palpable. Every moment feels like it could tip the balance in one direction or the other. But the judge, sensing the deeper currents beneath the surface, remains composed. He asks the daughter to step down, and as she walks back to her seat beside her father, the weight of the moment lingers. The mother's eyes remain fixed on the girl, a flicker of guilt, perhaps something deeper, crossing her face before she quickly masks it with a cold, hardened glare. What could be behind her actions? Was this really a mother's protection, or something more vindictive, a desire for control that runs far deeper than anyone had realized? The lawyer for the mother rises to cross-examine the daughter. "You say your mother told you things about your father. Can you remember exactly what she said?" His voice is calculated, trying to unearth something that can discredit the girl's testimony. But the girl remains calm, recounting the words with the kind of clarity that makes the mother's accusations seem shallow in comparison. "I remember her saying he didn't want me when I was born," the girl states, her voice unwavering. "That he didn't care. But I don't believe that. I remember the way he looked at me when I was little, how he would play with me. I don't think he could have ever felt that way." The courtroom is silent. The weight of the child's words reverberates through everyone present. The mother's lawyer knows he's losing ground, but he presses on. "But your mother has always taken care of you, hasn't she? She's done everything for you. Don't you think that shows she loves you? The girl hesitates, glancing at her mother before speaking again, her voice smaller but still resolute. She did a lot of things for me. But she also tells me not to talk to him. She says things about him that make me feel like I'm bad for loving him. There's a long, painful silence as those words hang in the air. The mother's face twists, the emotions flickering in her eyes, but she quickly averts her gaze. The room can feel the shift in her, like she's starting to realize that the narrative she's built around herself might not hold up under the weight of her daughter's honesty. As the cross-examination continues, the subplot of manipulation comes to light more clearly. It's not just the daughter's relationship with her mother that's being tested, it's her relationship with the truth. Was she really manipulated, or has she been empowered by a painful reality she's been forced to confront? The more the daughter speaks, the more a pattern emerges, the subtle, yet powerful ways her mother has controlled the narrative of her life, keeping her distant from her father, and painting him as the villain. It's not just about custody anymore. It's about control, power, and whether or not the truth will break free. The father's lawyer, a calm and collected figure in the courtroom, stands up to cross-examine the mother. You've claimed that your ex-husband is unfit to be a father. You've accused him of neglect, but we've heard from your daughter. Does that sound like a child who's been neglected? A child who's terrified of her father? The mother flinches, but her eyes harden again, her defenses back up. He's not who he seems to be, she says, her voice cracking but still firm. I don't want to go into the details of his actions, but I know what I've seen. He's not capable of taking care of her. He's dangerous. The father's lawyer doesn't let up. You keep saying he's dangerous, but you've never provided concrete evidence of any harm to your daughter. Instead, we've heard her voice, loud and clear. What's the truth here? The mother's expression falters for a split second, and the courtroom notices. But she quickly regains her composure, brushing off the insinuation as though it's irrelevant. However, the damage is done. The seed of doubt is planted. Outside the courtroom, whispers of the trial have already begun to spread like wildfire. Friends and family of both parties have been talking, sharing their own versions of events, but what will the public think when the full truth is finally revealed? Could this custody battle be about something far darker than anyone could have imagined? And then, just when the case seems to be heading toward a turning point, something unexpected happens. The father receives a call. A source, anonymous and deep within the mother's circle, offers up a chilling piece of information. The mother has been hiding something far worse than anyone suspected. What could it be? Will this revelation be enough to turn the tide in his favor, or will it only make things more complicated? As the courtroom adjourns for the day, the father's mind races. The pieces are starting to come together, but he knows that this battle is far from over. The stakes are higher than ever, and the final outcome remains uncertain. How much of the truth will come out? How far will the mother go to protect her side of the story? And most importantly, what does the daughter really need to feel safe? The suspense lingers. And with every passing moment, the tension builds, leaving everyone to wonder, what's next? As the days passed, the uncertainty around the custody battle deepened. The father, now in possession of the shocking new information, couldn't shake the feeling that his next move could determine the future of his relationship with his daughter. The anonymous call he had received earlier weighed heavily on his mind. Whoever had contacted him had claimed that the mother, in her bid to maintain control, had hidden something that could shift the entire case in his favor. But what could it be? Was it a lie, a mere attempt to manipulate him, or was there real substance to the claim? That night, he sat in his small apartment, staring at the phone. The text message he had received from the anonymous source sat open on the screen. She's hiding something. It's not just about you and her. It's about her. About what she's capable of. It was vague, unsettling, and filled with an ominous tone. But it had to mean something. He couldn't ignore it. The more he thought about it, the more he wondered if the secret his ex-wife was guarding was the key to winning his daughter back. He contacted his lawyer, who advised him to investigate further, but to proceed with caution. If there's something real to this, the lawyer said, it could change everything. But be careful. If it's nothing, it could backfire and make things worse. The following days were filled with a tense mix of anticipation and frustration. His lawyer began digging into the mother's past, combing through records, talking to anyone who might have insight into her history, looking for any evidence that could corroborate the anonymous tip. Every lead came up empty. There was no sign of financial trouble, no criminal activity, no hidden secrets in her background. It was as if she had covered her tracks perfectly. But the father's intuition told him that something was amiss. Then, as the trial neared its final days, a breakthrough came. The source who had reached out to him made contact again. This time, they were more specific, urging him to look into the mother's mental health history. She's always been like this, the message read. Her need for control is deeper than you know. It's not just about you. It's about everyone around her. She's done this before. The father's stomach dropped. He had never considered this angle before. He had always known that his ex-wife was difficult, controlling, even manipulative at times, but had she really been hiding something as serious as a mental health issue? And if so, what would that mean for his custody battle? He consulted with his lawyer again, who immediately started looking into the mother's medical records. After days of waiting, they finally got a response from a private investigator. The results were shocking. The mother had been diagnosed with a personality disorder years ago, something she had kept hidden from everyone, including her own family. The diagnosis was something the father had never suspected: narcissistic personality disorder. It explained so much: the emotional manipulation, the controlling behavior, the way she used their daughter as a pawn in her personal battles. When the father learned the truth, it was as if the entire case shifted in an instant. All the pieces began to fall into place, and for the first time, he felt like he understood what had been happening all along. He wasn't just fighting for custody, he was fighting against a woman who would stop at nothing to maintain control, even if it meant hurting their daughter in the process. Armed with this new information, the father was ready to confront the truth head-on. He wasn't just seeking custody anymore. He was seeking justice for his daughter, for himself, and for the future of their family. He knew he couldn't keep letting the mother manipulate the narrative. It was time to take control of the story and make sure that his daughter's voice was heard loud and clear. The day of the final trial arrived, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, like the calm before a storm. The daughter, who had been surprisingly calm throughout the process, sat beside her father, her small hand wrapped around his. She knew this was the final chapter of a long, painful saga. The judge called the court to order, and the father's lawyer stood up, ready to make their final argument. But before he could say a word, the mother's lawyer rose and made an unexpected request. She wanted to call her client to the stand, something that hadn't happened yet in the case. The judge, a bit taken aback by the request, allowed it. Everyone in the room knew that this was likely the final opportunity for the mother to make her case, to defend herself against the accusations of manipulation and emotional abuse. The mother walked to the stand, her usual calm demeanor now replaced by a layer of forced composure. She began speaking in her usual defensive tone, recounting all the ways she believed the father had wronged her. Her words were filled with bitterness and resentment, but they didn't hold the same weight they once did. The room was already beginning to see through her facade. Then, in a moment that shocked everyone, the father's lawyer stood up and asked the judge for permission to cross-examine her directly. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, his voice steady and deliberate, "we've heard a lot about the father's supposed neglect, but we've also heard from the daughter herself. I'd like to ask the mother a few questions about her own behavior." The judge granted the request, and the lawyer wasted no time. "You've claimed that the father has been emotionally abusive. But what about your own behavior? Your daughter testified that you told her he didn't love her, that he didn't want her. How do you respond to that?" The mother's face twitched slightly, but she quickly regained control. "That's just a misunderstanding. She didn't understand what I was trying to protect her from." The lawyer wasn't finished. But you also told her not to speak to him, not to trust him. You've accused him of being dangerous, yet we've seen no evidence of this. And now we've learned something else. We've learned about your own mental health history. Your diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. How does that factor into your ability to be a mother? Do you think it might be influencing your actions in this case? The courtroom was silent. The mother's eyes widened, and for the first time in the entire trial, she seemed unsure of herself. She stammered, trying to deflect, but the damage was already done. The truth was out. Her control over the narrative was slipping away, and with it, any hope of keeping her daughter away from her father. The judge, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally spoke. I've heard enough. I'll take some time to deliberate and will return with my decision shortly. As the courtroom emptied, the father and daughter stood together, their hearts heavy but hopeful. They had done everything they could, but now it was in the hands of the judge. The uncertainty lingered, but for the first time in years, the father felt like he might actually be able to give his daughter the life she deserved. Several days later, the final ruling came. The judge's decision was clear: custody was awarded to the father. The mother would have supervised visitation, but the primary responsibility for raising their daughter would now fall on the father's shoulders. The relief that washed over the father was overwhelming. He held his daughter in his arms, knowing that their battle had been long and painful, but it had ultimately brought them closer together. The mother, though devastated, was left to face the consequences of her actions. She had tried to manipulate the court, to use her daughter as a pawn in her personal war, but in the end, it was the truth that prevailed. As they left the courthouse, hand in hand, the father looked at his daughter and smiled. She had been the heart of this entire case, and now, they could finally begin to heal. Together. This story was not just about a custody battle. It was about the power of truth, the importance of listening to the voices of those who are often unheard, and the strength that can come from standing up for what's right. It was about the bond between a father and his daughter, a bond that nothing, not even the most bitter of battles, could ever break. The court case may have been over, but their journey was just beginning. They had been through the storm, and now, they could finally embrace the calm.